Facts. Yeah, facts. We tell you facts. All the facts.
Yeah, but my section is mostly about the ways in which like this film was grounded in certain areas of science. I didn't read the book, so I didn't know about all that stuff. So it was actually very interesting to learn about. And now I really want to read the books, even though I'm really bad at reading. But this film was a trip in a lot of ways. It was very scary. It should definitely be dubbed horror. The second that bear started screaming like a person and the insides of that guy started moving around like snakes, I was done. Not like I didn't want to stop watching it, but like this entire series has done way too much to my appetite that's already pretty sensitive. I'm just like, I can't eat ever again because the ways in which nature has been manipulated to be so gross, it just has ruined a lot of foods for me. But it is what it is. It's part of the work, you know? It's ultimately good. I've had to switch to veganism / vegetarianism because now I just like can't look at meat without wanting to die. So ultimately that's good for the environment. It adds to the process. It did its job. But it's very real. It's purely texture based and wasn't motivated by wanting to help the planet, but it inadvertently does, so that's good. But yeah, so one thing that's really interesting about the film, in the fact that it does differ a lot from the book, is that they tried really hard to base it in real science. In an interview with IndieWire titled "Annihilation is Fiction, but the Science Isn't Bullshit," Alex Garland's Scientific Accuracy Explained. It kind of talks about Dr. Adam Rutherford, who's Alex Garland's scientific advisor, and provides some insight into what parts of the film are based in terms of real science, like the plant people and the bear people. So there are some striking scenes throughout the movie that actively haunt me, that while they aren't necessarily possible, the reality of like we only know so much about science makes it that they could be the more we figure life out. So Rutherford responded in this article saying like that if the plant people are real. So he says not entirely, but the phenomena of what goes on in the shimmer is based on real science. We share almost all of our genes with all other living organisms, and all organisms that have basic body shapes have almost exactly the same genes. Essentially, the genes say, this is the order of the body. This is how the body is going to be set up. This is called a Hox gene. That is real, proper Nobel Prize winning science. In a sense, we're taking an idea that is very real and twisting it. In real life, you can take the eye gene of a fly and the eye gene of a mouse and swap them around, and the fly and the mouse will still grow the right eyes that correspond to their species. That's real science. But in fiction, you can take that to the next level. You could do that with a human and an organism that's far more distant related, like a plant. In that sense, no, you can't. But plants don't have the right genes to grow a human shape, but the principle is correct. So essentially, will there be plant people? Probably not. But he does go on to explain like that the same is true about the bear and the alligator in the film, and that the manipulation of what we know as the Hox gene is what really adds to the fear associated with the film. What I really appreciate about this is that it's something a lot of people may not have the context for, but like specifically, like if you were going to this movie and you had a decent amount of knowledge about genetics, like this is like a cool little Easter egg for you. Like you go in and you're like, they're not saying Neuraletians or whatever the heck, you know, like they're saying real words that are things that we actually know about based on the stuff of genetics. So I thought that was pretty cool. And there's a lot that they kind of go on to explain where it's like, we really haven't figured out the planet. So it's like, could the shimmer actually happen? The real answer is we don't know. Is it likely? Probably not, but we haven't explored enough of the planet. Like the ocean, as vast as it, we don't know what's down there. There's so many parts like of this planet that we live on that we don't understand. So could this stuff happen? We don't know, but it's also possible that it could happen. It's about as probable as the possibility of us living in a simulation.
Just like Vandermeer said, like we know so little.
Yeah, no, exactly. So, like, is it possible that there's an entire water-based species of humanoid creatures living in the dark depths of the ocean, and we won't know until we develop the technology to travel there? Like, there's so many possible things that we just don't have access to right now, and science is ever evolving. So, I'll be very honest here in trying to figure out what to explore for this film in terms of history or science or whatever. I struggled to really identify anything super exciting. I read a lot of things, including the development of genetic engineering and genetic modification, as well as the genetic drift and how that could impact us. And I guess ultimately, I just want to give a disclaimer that a lot of it did make a ton of sense to me because I'm not a scientist. But I'm going to do my best here. In some convoluted way, it's kind of a nice metaphor for how we really don't know anything, like, all the time. How the things we're saying on this show, even though we're not the end-all be-all. There are things that could be true or not true, and we just... I think our other thesis, aside from people are trash, is that, like, please go learn about stuff. Learning about stuff is important. It is like, you can't guarantee you'll be happy forever, but you can always learn more. If your purpose in life, it should be to learn stuff, gain knowledge. I'd say that's the only area in which Orochimaru was right. The rest of it was scary and horrible. But learning is positive. So what I learned about is genetic drift. And what is that, you ask? According to Khan Academy, genetic drift is a mechanism of evolution in which an allele, one of two or more versions of a gene, frequencies, that a population has change over generations due to chance or a sampling error. It occurs in all populations of non-infinite size, but its effects are strongest in small populations. It may result in the loss of some alleles, including beneficial ones, so genes, including the beneficial genes, and the fixation or rise of 100% frequency in other alleles. Genetic drift can have major effects on a population, specifically when it is sharply reduced in size by a natural disaster, activating a bottleneck effect, or when a small group splits off from the main population to found a colony under the founder effect. So, like, why is this relevant? I think considering the fact that we actively experience natural disasters, plagues, intense poverty, and other population decimating events, that it kind of sounds like something we should be worried about a little bit today. To translate kind of what the Khan Academy describes, genetic drift is when our genetics drift from the norm. So it happens when more species-wide, when large portions of the population are destroyed, leaving a somewhat random collection of humans left, who then spawn with each other, and thus certain genes are, like, honed in on than others. If certain genes have died out from said event, they would not exist anymore, or at the very least, rarely in the remaining population. For example, say all people without webbed toes died tomorrow, and the only humans left had webbed toes on Earth. The remaining humans spawn as thus happens, and the result would be web-toed humans for years to come. That's the bottleneck effect. The founder effect would be if, like, because of how horrific society is, we all just decide to isolate into little packages of humans. We're just like, everything's trash. We need to form our own little civilizations. So say society collapses and now we need to find our own little places. Those colonies that exist in isolation would eventually only have babies that have the traits of the people from that small section of the group. So say, like, everyone who didn't receive wisdom teeth naturally, I'm one of those. That's one of the mutations that I have. I don't have wisdom teeth. They naturally mutated in my genes and I don't have them.
Mine just fit.
Yeah, so but say everyone without wisdom teeth joined together and they formed a colony, and then maybe one or two people had wisdom teeth, but they were the minority of that. Once spawning would happen and new babies were born, it would be more likely that wisdom teeth would be an allele that was lost along the line. I don't know if that's exactly what they mean, but
that you're calling it spawning.
Yeah. You're welcome. I also enjoyed that when I was writing. I was like, that's fun. But yeah, so it's essentially like, that is how I interpreted it. I don't know enough about genes and genetics to know if that's exactly how it works, but I think, like, the analogy explains it at least kind of. So maybe it's not webbed feet, sure, but maybe it's something else that's like a gene that, like, is passed down. So, like, I think this is something, considering the current state of our world, that as our planet is being adapted, and I'll get into this a lot more in our next episode, but, like, the way we interact with the ecosystem and the things that we are unknowingly, we're creating bottlenecks effects across our entire planet with different species. This includes viruses. This includes actual plant life. This includes animals. Like, we have been doing that through just decimating wilderness spaces, decimating resources within the planet. So we have been creating this that certain alleles will continue to develop, or random mutations as a means of survival could do that. Or we get random mutations that actively hurt the living creatures that still live here. And that is still our fault. If we cut down all the trees and a bottleneck effect murders all of the fruit flies, you know what I mean? Then, you know, that's what happens now. And we just don't have those. And who knows? Maybe those fruit flies were the thing that causes cancer. There are just long-lasting biodiversity implications of the reality of what this could mean. Apparently, there's also research being conducted on how genetic drift influenced the development of COVID-19 variants. So if you ever played Plague Evolved, you get to see how the development of mutations within a virus increase over time, thus making it more deadly and spreadable. The goal of the virus is to start out light so it remains undetectable, but once it impacts a large sample of the population and exists in a specific area for a long time, mutations naturally occur. That's why everyone's like, get vaccinated. Yes. So, because the longer it stays in your body, the more mutations will develop and the more the virus will evolve. So we're looking at the intent of the book of the Annihilation. This makes sense, and honestly inspired me by watching the way in which creatures evolve and find life, various things. It's all very interesting into their own ecosystems. So this eliminating of bulk in populations, in my non-scientific opinion, is disastrous. And like, say we were to do this ourselves, I think there are like long-lasting implications that we can't even personally conceive right now. And it's something I think that's been explored in horror like countless times, when manipulating the way humanoid creatures mutate and become horrific. So say, for example, like The Descent, human population isolates in cave, spawn in cave, long period of time. Now we have adapted random mutations in order to exist in cave. Now we are darkness people who are scary and don't see light and murder. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's a thing. Like, if the populations isolate, that's why it's like a theme in a lot of games too, where like they're they're cure to diseases because they haven't gone through like this mass evolution. They've experienced genetic drift, so they could develop things that we are not able to through just existing in this like mass blob of humanity. Which is interesting. Ultimately, it's my story for you.
I think what we can learn from Annihilation, both film, the book, and just the science behind it, is that we really know nothing. We know so little about our environment, and like, we are fools to think we can know it exactly. Like, it's operating in such an inhuman way, like that it, like, we would really have to become less human in like our understanding of the world in order to understand what it's doing, and its motivations and why. And I think, you know, like, our humanity is what makes people beautiful, but it also can cut us off from the rest of the world because we think we live in this little bubble, and we don't. We live on this planet that's either gonna live in harmony with us or it's gonna get rid of us, because we are a parasite.
I mean, ultimately it's like, it shouldn't be something being good, shouldn't be called humanity. There should be other language for it that includes the other creatures that live here, because then it's less isolated. I feel like that is like a very English language / like Western time. It should be called like something different.
Animals care for each other.
They're nice.
And other plants even care for each other. Like, plants communicate.
The trees, when they die, send their resources to the living trees.
Well, it's like even what Vandermeer was saying, like, there's like the symbiotic relationships in nature that you wouldn't even consider. And it's like these are two different species of things interacting and working on each other just to survive. Like, they're benefiting one another in this beautiful, it's like when you see animal friendships. You're like, that's crazy. This hippo befriended a dog, like, whatever. But it's because it's not exclusively human to share and to support somebody else. It's a point of nature, because it's survival is helping others and helping other things. And so it's exactly our survival if we help the environment. Like if we start being like, hey, you've been giving us something, right? You've been giving us oxygen and sunlight and all kinds of varieties of vitamins and nutrients. How about we give a little something back and not try to kill you today?
Yeah. It honestly just reminds me of Mother that we're going to talk about in horror quiz, because that's what it was. It was the whole thing. It was like, yo.
Yeah.
She's like, leave. And it's like, yeah, we really should.
We really messing this up.
We really doing nothing good here.
You probably have already tuned in, but we are guessing horror queers talking about Mother. We're not going to cover it in our series, but it is, funnily enough, pretty much eco horror.
Yeah.
And
there's
like this scene where they're like painting the house, and she's like, "Why are you painting my house?" And they're like, it gave so much to us, like we have to give back. And I was like, but that's not what it wants. But it's not like we're stopping to ask the environment, like, you good? What can we do for you? Can I roll out some moss for you, or get you some sunshine and water and plant some trees for you? Like, we're not asking, we're just like assuming and trying to pick up the pieces for what the rest of the world is doing to it. So eco horror, that's the series, and it's really depressing, and I'm sorry, but hopefully it makes you appreciate the environment.
We need to live more symbiotically with nature. We need to like make our houses have grass roofs or like moss roofs, you know what I'm saying? Like we need to like take care of the things. We need to murder all the concrete. We need to destroy it. Yeah,
it's so bad, and it's not even like effective economically because it's bad after a while.
The economy isn't effective economically. We need to destroy that too.
Get some like solar panels, stuff for like we're gonna get into the different gas and other uses for power and how we're depleting the earth of its resources in a later episode, so just you wait. But coming. With that being said, because we have to wrap it up because I talked forever.
Okay,
don't get married.
Delete your kids.
And you work so hard spawning them.
Yeah, so you should want them to like live in a place that isn't dying.
Yeah, and so they can spawn.
Yeah. Isn't that the dream? Spawn some more. But we need a place for the spawning to happen, for the spawnies to keep going. We need a place for them.
Great spawnies. An earth that is bountiful and maybe really cool. Like,
where are they going to go once they're spawned?
I want my spawned to have a better life than I had when I was spawned,
Yeah. No one has to be spawned, but we're here now, so we need to do it.
No one has to be spawned, but that's nature, isn't it? Like, we're just here.
Spawn A and spawn B, just keep going forever.
Yeah. When a mommy spawned? Okay, we're done. So, that's what we do. Bye.
Bye.